On February 26, 1959, a Soviet search party was trekking through the brutal conditions of Kholat-Syakh, a peak in the remote northern Ural Mountains known by the indigenous Mansi people as Dead Mountain. There, half buried in the snowdrifts, they found a solitary canvas tent. But as investigators examined the site, they noticed a bizarre detail. The fabric hadn't been shredded by the high winds or torn by a scavenging animal. It had been deliberately sliced open from the inside. Inside, searchers found heavy winter clothing, sturdy boots, cameras, and carefully packed food rations. All of the gear essential for staying alive was still there, completely untouched, even though the temperature outside had dropped to a lethal -22 degrees Fahrenheit. To survive in an Arctic environment, your shelter and your layers are everything. Choosing to violently abandon a secure tent and walk into a freezing night without boots contradicts every established principle of winter survival. To understand why this evidence is so baffling, we have to look at who was in that tent. A month earlier, a 23-year-old engineering student named Igor Dyatlov led 8 of his peers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute on a winter expedition. This photograph shows the intense winter sports culture of the era. And these 9 young men and women were not amateurs. They were highly skilled athletes undertaking a 300-mile trek designed to earn them a Grade 3 certification, the highest rank in Soviet mountaineering. They knew exactly the environment they were walking into. The northern Urals in winter mean navigating blinding whiteouts, treacherous terrain, and relentless freezing winds. Because these 9 individuals were disciplined and experienced experts, we know they wouldn't abandon their only shelter over a minor issue or an amateur mistake. Their flight into the darkness was a desperate reaction to a threat they could not manage. Outside the tent, investigators found a trail of footprints leading down the exposed slope. Looking closely at the tracks, they saw some hikers were in socks, some wore a single shoe, others were completely barefoot. Yet the spacing of these impressions revealed a calm, orderly retreat. The hikers didn't sprint away in a chaotic panic. The tracks showed they walked side by side, moving deliberately through the snow. Searchers followed this trail for nearly a mile, tracing the path down the barren mountainside until it reached the edge of a thick forest. There, beneath a large old cedar tree, they found the first 2 bodies. Both men were dressed inadequately for the cold. Right beside them lay the charred remains of a small campfire. High up in the branches of that cedar, the wood was snapped and broken. Forensics concluded that one or both of the men had climbed the trunk in the dark, perhaps trying to spot their tent in the distance, or search for whatever had driven them down the mountain. Investigators soon found 3 more bodies scattered on the slope between the tree and the tent, including Igor Dyatlov. All 5 appeared to have died from severe hypothermia. At first, it seemed like a straightforward case of exposure, but the remaining 4 hikers wouldn't be found for another 2 months. It wasn't until the snow finally began to melt in May of 1959 that search teams located the rest of the group. They were buried under several meters of packed snow, deep inside a rocky ravine. When the autopsies were performed, the medical examiners found catastrophic internal injuries. One hiker had a fractured skull. 2 others suffered massive chest fractures. This diagram illustrates the anomaly. Breaking these bones requires pressure equal to a high-speed car crash, yet the external outline shows 0 exterior trauma. Strangely, one hiker was missing facial tissue and her tongue. Finally, counters detected high radioactive contamination soaked into their clothing. These findings conflicted with the narrative of a simple survival tragedy. Severe internal crushing, missing tissue, and radiation created a sequence of events that resists a single logical explanation. In 2020, Russian authorities reopened the case to apply modern analytics and concluded the tragedy was caused by a localized, delayed snow slab avalanche. The mechanics of the theory suggest that when the hikers cut into the snowy slope to pitch their tent, they destabilized the ledge above them. Hours later, a heavy block of snow broke loose. In pitch darkness, the deep rumbling of that shifting ice would have sounded like a massive avalanche, prompting an immediate evacuation. But applying that theory to the actual evidence creates inconsistencies. A small snowslide at the campsite does not explain blunt force trauma equivalent to a car crash located down in a ravine nearly a mile away. The avalanche model also fails to account for the slow, orderly footprints leading down the hill. It doesn't explain the missing soft tissue or the radioactive contamination, leaving independent experts divided. This modern debate is a sharp contrast to the original Soviet investigation. In 1959, authorities abruptly closed the files, declaring simply that the hikers had died due to a compelling natural force. The Dyatlov Pass incident persists because it resists logic. Every proposed solution creates a new contradiction, demonstrating the difficulty of applying human reasoning to a sequence of events that leaves no clear trail. Despite over 6 decades of forensic and technological advancement, the exact events of that night remain out of reach. Whatever truly happened in the darkness is still out there, frozen in time on Dead Mountain.